notwithstanding your chilling self-confidence, which I obviously admire as a trait, do you have a moment of self-awareness where you just go in the mirror, wow, I was so wrong?
On the one hand, I'm like, this guy. On the other hand, I kind of respect it, because if we won, we would be sticking the knife in, okay? That's why I'm not getting super aggro when the occasional MAGA person shows up in either one of these chats and starts gloating. It's like, in my head, I'm like, fair play. I'd be doing the same thing. Friends, if you have a second or two, click like, comment down below. I would really appreciate it. Thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy the video. Longtime viewers of the channel are aware that I am a huge fan of chess, which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, AnnieChess.com. This is a variation of chess that is being developed alongside chess.com, another organization that I've done partnerships with in the past. What's unique about this kind of chess is the introduction of spells. Each turn you take adds 1 mana to your pool, and you can use that mana to cast spells during the game. They've recently launched the alpha version of the game that you can now get exclusive access to using code Hutch. There is a link down in the description below. If you click it, it'll take you to the site. I played it for a couple days now. It is a lot of fun. If you're a fan of chess and you want to experience a new way to play it, check it out.
Since Trump's stunning victories, understandably being rivers of tears shed by some of our regular uncensored contributors, and we feel it's important to check in on them just to check they're okay.
Oh, dear.
Here's how my final guest today reacted in real time as the results came in.
They're still outstanding. Are they not counting them here? What's going on, Vadim? You should know this. Why isn't Philadelphia counting votes? I want to know what the
Wait, is Piers presenting this as though Destiny wasn't being sarcastic? That's exactly what he's doing, isn't he? Does Piers know that he was being sarcastic? Does he even know that he was being sarcastic here?
What is going on? What the hell is going on right now?
Well, by popular demand, Destiny rejoins me now. Destiny, I can't imagine this could have gone any worse for you, could it?
There are ways it could have gone worse. I think the writing was probably on the wall. Obviously, I have to do a stream for. Well, I could think of a number of ways it could have gone worse. We could have lost every single state. Could have been the Reagan landslide that everybody wanted it to be. But I think the writing was probably on the wall when the Florida vote started rolling in, and you saw that Miami had flipped red. But listen, we got to do a show, you know, as well as I do. You got to keep it entertaining for 12 hours. So we were engaging in some high-level Bernie math into the deep hours of the night, trying to see if there was a way for Harris to win. And yeah, it was a fun time.
I mean, look, it's been an absolute debacle for the Democrats. Why do you think it's been such a crushing defeat?
Honestly, I think that I understand that we have to keep our jobs and we have to make sure that our jobs are important by telling people how important they are. But I think the real answer, because all the analysis was done earlier by all these panelists, especially Roger Stone, who's an American trader, was absolutely ludicrous. I think the actual answer is Americans just kind of vote based on the economic vibes they feel. Yep. I think that when Biden won in 2020, it was because COVID. Everybody felt horrible. The economy was like everything was crazy, not just the economy. Everything was crazy. So people voted for Biden. I think that when Biden came in, I think we had a lot of inflation early on. People still feel the cumulative effects. So then they vote Trump. I think it's probably as simple as that. You can try to like reach to all of these other things, but like basically every other point brought up earlier, which is factually completely and totally ridiculous and incorrect. The idea of like weaponizing the DOJ and then bringing up New York State. The fact that Donald Trump has done every single thing that you guys earlier were accusing the Biden admin of doing, except like 20 times worse. I don't think at the end of the day, Americans don't care about that. If you talk to an average person, they're not going to tell you about the Department of Justice is weaponizing, blah, blah. They're just going to say like, man, you know, it's expensive right now. And that's about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is partly true, certainly on the economic part. I agree with you.
All this post-mortem about like they're pissed that they didn't do a proper primary, and they're pissed that, you know, that Kamala had a funny laugh, or Kamala was campaigning with Liz Cheney, and like all of this stuff is just so well below the extremely predictable phenomenon of an electorate punishing the incumbent party for an economic downswing. Like, it is so exceedingly rare, not just in American history, but in world history, to find leaders of governments or parties that are in charge of governments all over the country that do just as well or better during an economic downswing. It's like 99 times out of 100 when you look at European countries, when you look at Asian countries, when you look everywhere all over the world. If inflation goes up, if unemployment goes up, if GDP goes down, if people's spending power goes down, they are typically going to blame whatever party is in control, whether it's a conservative party or a left-leaning party. This is so predictable.
with you. And I think I would add immigration and the southern border crisis has been
totally predictable, but you predicted her to win. It's not. We were able to observe people's frustrations with Biden that got passed down to her in the polls before any vote took place. So we already knew that this phenomenon was occurring. We already knew that Americans broadly blamed Biden for inflation, and they associated the Trump term with a more prosperous time for them. They associated a Trump term with more economic stability. They associated a Biden term with more economic volatility because the economic circumstances changed. And in that spot, it's going to be so difficult for an incumbent party to head off that tide. It's really, really difficult to explain to people the complex nature of things like interconnected industries, strained supply chains, and excessive demand. Like you can sit a voter down and explain to them like, okay, well, this is what happens when we produce, crude oil, or this is what happens when we purchase crude oil from Canada, and then we got to transport that oil through a pipeline. Then it goes to a refinery in Texas, and if the refinery if the infrastructure isn't there in place to process the oil when demand spikes up to levels that we hadn't seen even pre-pandemic, because everybody was going out all at once after the vaccine, this will impact the price of oil, and this will impact and then if OPEC makes a decision to wind down the production of oil to intentionally manipulate the prices, this is going to and like this is how Russia invading Ukraine causes a disruption of the supply chain, and this is how that impacts like the price of like all of this is like relevant, obviously, and it matters, and it may be correct, but it doesn't matter to like a regular consumer. Like the regular consumer or the regular voter or whatever, the median voter, they're not super keyed into this stuff. They're not looking at their phone every hour and get an update on the war in Ukraine. It's just they get off work at 5:30 and then they go to the gas station and gas costs $1 more. And they're like, what the is Biden doing? It's really that simple. I mean, there are so many factors to consider in this race. And when we do postmortems over the next in the coming months, as we talk to more and more voters and as we gather more and more data and as there's more things to look at to give us a clearer picture of what happened, I'm sure we're going to be able to unpack and disentangle a lot of different moving parts, a lot of different maybe ways that the Kamala campaign and the Democratic Party could have gone in a different direction here, could have gone in a different direction there. She should have done Rogan's, like stuff like that. There's plenty of time to have that conversation. But right now, the picture of why this election went that it did is just so clear. It's just so clear when voters were talking to these exit pollsters and they told them that it was the economy. It's just so clear. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Being a major added component to that, because people resented the fact that not only could they not afford to feed their kids, but there were all these people coming in illegally on the border and putting extra.
But then it's like if you ask like a MAGA person, they're upset about the price. But then if you ask them like, okay, well, what would you like Biden to have done? All of a sudden, a lot of people are going to turn into like communists. All of a sudden, price controls look really appealing. Like why didn't Biden just put a price cap on rent? Why didn't Biden put a price cap on groceries? And so people start turning into like leftists or fascists. People that may consider themselves to be fiscally conservative. Like on paper, they may tell you, oh, I'm against big government. We need just to like get the government out of the way and let the free market do its thing. And then all of a sudden as, gas price goes up $2, they're like, wait, just cap the price. What are we doing? Just press the rent go down button. Just press the groceries go down button. What are you doing? Why aren't you pressing that button?
To pressure on public services and taking jobs and so on. I think you can't discount that.
That's not.
Well, you would discount it, but I wouldn't.
No, I would discount it because the Republicans discounted it. If the border was a huge issue, then the border bill wouldn't have been shut down. They would have negotiated harder on it, but they didn't. They shut it down because they knew it wasn't a real issue. People care about things like the border and immigration because Republicans told them to care about things like the border and immigration. The reality is,
yep, one of my Facebook friends was celebrating the checks they believe Biden will be sending out. Oh, I said Biden? Sorry, Trump. You have a friend that is celebrating what he thinks are checks that Trump is going to send to Americans. Is that a thing? Are people actually expecting that? That seems crazy to me. He did it once. Well, no, technically he did it twice. There was the CARES Act and the HEROES Act. They sent rounds of stimulus out twice on Trump's watch. And then Biden completed the $600 stimulus payment with another $1,400. Remember that discourse? You said it was going to be $2,000. That was fun. The idea of I don't know where people are getting the idea that Donald Trump is going to send checks to people. One of my coworkers said that to me today. Stop, you guys are memeing. I think you guys are memeing me. There's no way. There's no way this is a widespread thought in conservative circles that Trump is going to get in there and like send everybody money. I don't believe you. I just don't believe you.
As unemployment is incredibly low. If you want a really big like top line takeaway from this whole thing that would be interesting that nobody will discuss because it's incredibly boring, perhaps the Federal Reserve targets politically should actually target.
Wait, now there's somebody in my YouTube chat saying the same thing. I've seen my Facebook friends think that could happen. Somebody else saying, yep. What is happening? Where did that come from? Who started that rumor? Trump's going to get in there and send everybody a $3,000 check.
Things like inflation more than unemployment. Maybe on a political level, maybe it was worth it to suffer 8 or 9% unemployment rather than.
You can ask for low inflation or you can ask for more stimulus checks, but you cannot ask for both of these things at the same time. Sorry. Vintage with 300 bits. I had a conversation with a coworker today and she told me she had no idea Trump was a convicted felon. I had to tell that he was convicted and to look it up. She thought he was charged, but the trial didn't happen yet. She said if she knew that, she wouldn't have voted for him. Okay, well, I'm going to become the Joker. I'm going to go get some makeup. I'm going to set a mirror in front of me, and I am going to become the Joker, is how I'm going to react to that.
And so aggressively trying to target an inflation figure and keeping unemployment low, maybe, but that's a macro.
Did you guys know that specific clown faces are trademarked? Did you guys know this? So when they were deciding what the clown makeup for Joaquin Phoenix's Joker was going to be, you actually have to go to, I guess there's a database of patented or trademarked clown faces, and they had to make sure that the clown face doesn't match what somebody else did. Did you not see the Google trends on did Biden drop out? They spiked right up to the day of the election. There were a few Google trends that spiked right before the election took place that made me want to become the Joker. There was one of them where if you look up, hold on, I guess I can look it up now. Google trend. One that I saw blew my mind. It was where Biden ballot. You see that big old spike on election day? You see this big old spike on election day? I want to meet that person. I'm honestly jealous of that person. That person is Unabomber levels of disconnected from the rest of the country. That's only 100 results though. Is that what that means? Well, maybe if I phrase it differently, like where ballot Biden, I'm not sure. I saw a picture. There were like 4 images of Google Trend searches that all spiked that day. And one of them is like, who is Kamala? Hold on, Google Trends. 100 is an index, so it's not the raw total of, yeah, exactly. Who is Kamala? Oh boy. Starting the day before the election, and it spiked the night before the election. People were searching who is Kamala. And again, I don't want to judge these people because I respect it. You are so far off the grid at that point. None of this shit phases you. You know, you live in a cabin in Missouri or you know, you live in the redwoods in Northern California. You probably haven't even paid your taxes in 20 years. You're so disconnected that you're doing a Google search for who is Kamala the day of the election.
When you get a result like this, Destiny, notwithstanding your chilling self-confidence, which I obviously admire as a trait, do you have a moment of self-awareness where you just go in the mirror, wow, I was so wrong?
Oh, man. Well, we'll see who's wrong. I mean, Donald Trump is going to be the president. We know who he is. We know the precedent that he set the first time around. I think it is inevitable that it is going to be a show. My absolute nightmare for a second Trump scenario is that he just kind of gets lazy and he just kind of hangs out in the background. He doesn't really do like a whole lot, and the economy continues to improve, you know? And he actually doesn't really like follow through on a lot of what he says, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think he is day one going to send out. I think he is going to pursue. I think he is going to pursue the tariff policy. I think he is going to pursue the mass deportation policy. I think he's going to do both of those things. And both of those things are, in my opinion, I could be wrong. The American people could surprise me, but the consequences of both of those things are entirely predictable. Well, at the very least with the tariffs, it's entirely predictable. If he does a 20% tariff on all imports, you will see inflation. You will see the costs of goods and services go up. It is an inescapable outcome of that kind of a policy. And then, never put it past the American people though, because I wouldn't bet my life savings that he won't find a way to blame Biden for that. And people won't believe him. I don't know if I can't guarantee you that he won't convince people that it's Biden's fault somehow. Oh, no, the tariffs didn't do this. This has all happened because of the Chips and Science Act. It's all because of the infrastructure bill. And as far as like the mass deportations go, that's a more horrifying outcome to me, is if he does the mass deportations and then we are all inundated with hundreds of videos coming in all over TikTok and Twitter and Facebook of like literal like families being ripped apart and, like crying mothers, crying kids, a guy being escorted into a van wearing handcuffs or being handcuffed. What really horrifies me is if we see those images and then Americans like it. Now that scares me. I think that is very possible.
Do you think that the Republicans had a moment of self-awareness in 2020?
That's what they want. My hope is that, Americans say they want things like Americans say they want tariffs, you guys. You understand that? Do you realize one of the reasons why Trump runs on tariffs is because it's popular. And most people don't understand what tariffs are. So people like 65% of the country like his tariff plan. It might even be higher than that. It might even be like 70 or 80%. I can't remember the numbers that I looked at, but tariffs are broadly popular. So people can say that they want tariffs, but then when he actually does tariffs and the prices of goods and services go up, are they going to like those tariffs then? Probably not. And then at that point, it's just about like him trying to, it's entirely possible that he gets in there and he goes, you know what? We decided not to do tariffs. Instead, we're just going to do the targeted tariffs. So it's possible that he ran on doing tariffs, knowing that he wouldn't actually do it, knowing that it's popular policy, but also knowing that it's bad policy that would result in bad things. And then he gets in there and he goes, we're just going to keep them on China. We're just going to do the tariffs on China. We decided to back off of the other thing. But because if he actually does the universal 20% tariff, it's going to be a disaster for him. It's just going to be such a predictable disaster for him.
Well, it wasn't the question. I just wonder whether you had a moment of self-awareness.
I look at the figures as they come in. I try to analyze what the public is. But this idea that like the Democratic Party needs to do some huge soul searching after the Republicans, tried to coup their way back into office when they lost the last election. Nah, I think that's ridiculous. I think the double standard is ridiculous. I think that the passes that you guys give Trump are absolutely insane.
We were talking about this yesterday, where it's like there's all this onus on the Democrats right now to do this soul searching and to dive into the numbers and figure out like where we went wrong and all that stuff. There's no onus right now on Republicans to do some soul searching that they elected a convicted felon who tried to coup the government. Like there's no expectation that they need to do any soul searching because, they're in victory mode. And so they think a political win vindicates them. Absolutely. But when the shoe's on the other foot, they obviously don't think that. Like they obviously don't think that when Biden was elected in 2020, it was a complete vindication of like liberalism and like left-wing politics. But they're in the victory seat now, and so they see it as a total vindication. So he's framing this as like, oh, do you think you need to do some soul searching? And it's like, Trump winning does not change my priors at all. Trump winning does not mean that I don't think that Kamala was the better candidate. She just lost. Most Americans disagreed with me, unfortunately. But I'm not going to, after the fact, be like, oh, maybe Trump's not that bad. It's just like, that's not how any of this works. But that's the way that Piers is framing this right now, which is a bit silly.
I think at the end of the day, it's just voting on your general economic trends. The only tragic thing is that because the economy has been righted, in such a positive way, and nobody knows it because nobody talks about it, but the United States is outperforming basically every other country in the world on metrics like inflation, on metrics like unemployment, on metrics like real wages. Now that the ship has been righted, we're in a situation again where thankfully a Republican can come in after a Democrat has, I complained about this before in your show, after a Democrat has righted the ship after an economic catastrophe. Trump did it after Obama, and now Trump is going to do it again after Biden, and now he can try to take credit for all the things that he wasn't able to do in his administration, right? He couldn't pass infrastructure. Biden did. Now when stuff is getting built, he's going to take credit for it. He couldn't bring manufacturing like chips back to the United States when he tried to tariff China. Biden did with the CHIPS Act. Now Trump could take credit for it as that stuff gets built. So, the cycle of politics continues.
When you realized that Trump had won the White House, the Senate, probably the House, he's going to get another 2.
Piers just sticking the knife in and turning. But I'm sorry to disappoint. If anybody came here looking for like this epic meltdown, I'm sorry I didn't deliver that to you. I'm disappointed, but I'm not gonna melt down. Like I'm none of my priors about Trump change whatsoever. And for this time around, I kind of moved into the acceptance phase like right away. Like even on election night, there was an initial period of like, oh, what is happening? And then by about 8 or 9 p.m., I was kind of like, I was in a place of acceptance around it. And it wasn't the Xanax. I'll tell you, it wasn't the Xanax. First of all, the dose that I took was very low. And second of all, the dose that I took was at like 2 p.m. Okay. So I didn't, the tiny dose that I took at 2 p.m. was not the reason why I was zen by 8 or 9 p.m. And then there's been some like reflection, because I want to be good at this job, right? So like I want to like think about how did I cover that race, and what are there any lessons, right? Like somebody's at our front door. 1 second. Don't look. It's Trump. I'm being deported. What was I talking about? It didn't take me very long before this time around. So in 2016, basically right up until the inauguration, there was a lot of like panic and worry and like a lot of uncertainty and we were in just brand new territory. And this time around, it took me like this to go from a place of disappointment. I don't know if I was shocked, maybe like a little bit of like shocked, because I was optimistic going into it. And now I'm in a place of, okay, what are the next steps? Like I never went in through any kind of denial phase, and I didn't back in 2016 either. But now all I'm focused on is, okay, how can I improve on my job? Like, how can I improve on what I'm doing and how I'm contributing to things in my own way, in my own little like nook of the internet? And what are the steps moving forward in terms of strategizing for, okay, so how do we got to wait to see how things unfold to a certain extent. There's a bit of a hurry up and wait situation here where, Biden's going to be president for the next 2 months. And then once Trump steps in and starts doing what he does, it's going to inform what we're going to do. Right. So I never had any kind of meltdown mode this time around. If I spend too much time looking at Twitter and again, there are like, I'm not looking at my mentions basically at all. But when I glance at them, when I kind of peek back the curtain and look at my mentions, there are so many lefties that are giddy right now. They are learning the absolute worst possible lesson from this situation. The lesson they're learning from Kamala's defeat is they were totally vindicated. And now the party has no choice but to pivot towards them. Now the party has no choice but to aggressively court them in the future. And these people are straight up celebrating Trump winning, which like imagine being a Marxist and celebrating Trump winning. The cognitive dissonance there needs to be extracted, put in a petri dish, and studied with a microscope, because it's wild. Like, imagine being a Marxist and celebrating Donald Trump. That is insane. And so for that reason, I'm not looking at my mentions very much, because these people are lunatics. November with 200 bits. I will hang the misfortunes of those in Gaza and Ukraine on these lefties. But that's the thing. You can't blame them, though. You cannot blame lefties for this loss. You just can't. It wasn't lefties that lost her this race. In 2016, when the margins were so thin, when they were razor thin, then you had a leg to stand on to be like, damn, dude, if every Stein voter in this district here went for Hillary, then, you know, she would have won. You can't do that this time. So, and then on the other foot, they can't claim credit for this. This didn't happen because of them. It didn't happen because of them.
On the Supreme Court, probably. In other words, a complete quick, clean sweep. He won the popular vote as well as the Electoral College. Did you cry?
No, I'm not. But I'm not a crier. If I was more emotional, maybe.
What are these? Oh my God, man. On the one hand, I'm like, this guy. On the other hand, I kind of respect it because if we won, we would be sticking the knife in, okay? On the one hand, it's like this guy Piers, and on the other hand, it's like I'd be doing the same thing and probably much. If we won, I would have been so petty. I would have been gloating so much. That's why I'm not getting super aggro when the occasional MAGA person shows up in either one of these chats and starts gloating. It's like, in my head, I'm like, fair play. I'd be doing the same thing. This is what it's time for. Mike comes in the chat. He says liberal tears. There it is right there. And it's kind of like, you know what? Fair play. Listen, I'd be doing the same thing. Can't get mad. I mean, I'm mad about the outcome. I'm mad about a lot of other things, but it's your constitutional right to get super petty on social media after you win an election. It's an American tradition at this point that is as American as apple pie.
Maybe I would have.
Not a tear? Nothing?
I mean, I was streaming all night. If there were any tears there, you would have seen them.
Destiny,
I will say though, I haven't seen any Democrats try to take over the Capitol building. We'll see on January 6th. You know,
Did Piers really invite him to do a 4-minute interview that was 90% Piers going, "Did you cry, huh, Lib? Did you cry? Do you feel stupid now, Lib? Huh? Where did you? Can I see those liberal tears? Really? Is this a 4-minute interview of Piers just being like, "Oh, did you cry, Lib? Don't you feel stupid now?"
I mean, I shouldn't hold my breath, but we'll see.
Well, the odd thing actually has been the singular.
Piers is, you know who he is right now? He's that one character in Game of Thrones that rung the bell and just went shame, shame, shame. And he wanted Destiny to be like Cersei Lannister here.
The lack of protest. I mean, I felt this at Madison Square Garden when I went to that rally, and the Secret Service told me they were expecting thousands of protesters, and 150 people turned up. And I've been really struck being in New York. There've been no protests whatsoever at this thumping Trump win. It's nothing like 2016, which makes me think the Democrats massively miscalculated in trying to continue to play the he's Hitler and blah, 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 blah.
How long did it take for there to be protests after Trump won in 2016? Were there protests after the election, or did the protests not happen until after the inauguration? I don't remember there being protests right away, but I could be wrong. I know there were protests the day of the inauguration, and then the day after the inauguration was the Women's March, which was a huge protest. But that wasn't right after the election. That was like 2 months after the election.
Blah, blah, because that's not what people are clearly feeling, or they really would be out in mass protests.
Sure, but I think Democrats are also able to lose elections. Conservatives can't, right? Because we're a little bit more grounded in reality. Like, the election outcome is either we win or we lose. On the conservative side, the only outcomes are we win or it was rigged. You saw it, and no Republican that you ever bring on this show will ever admit it, but Donald Trump said that the election was rigged this year. This, like 2 days ago, he was literally saying, we pulled up the tweet as the Philadelphia votes were started to roll in. He was saying voter fraud in Philadelphia. I saw people tweeting out that in Detroit, they're bringing in the vote dumps or whatever. So they were calling it rigged before they had any evidence, just like he called 2020 rigged with no evidence. They still believe it was rigged, just like he called 2016 rigged because he didn't win the popular vote. So, I mean, like, yeah, when the election can only be rigged, or when the election, you know, is going to be won, of course, they're going to be more prone to throw a temper tantrum than the Democrats are.
Well, for the record, I did not think Trump had the last election stolen from him. I said it to his face, which enraged him, but he didn't. But this one, he's absolutely won fair and square, and it's good to see the Democrats accept that. Definitely good to talk to you. I love having you on Uncensored, so I really appreciate you coming back.
Piers just put on an absolute clinic for how to just be. I mean, that was some pettiness. He just raked Destiny over the coals. I don't know if he has a strong sense of who Destiny is, because if he was expecting Destiny to come on and just like lib out and scream and yell or whatever, I feel like I feel like Piers probably has like a caricature of who he thinks Destiny is based on assumptions that he made because Destiny is a liberal. I like Destiny is not one to just like lose composure and start screaming and yelling.